Welcome to the Base Set Bandits Podcast. This is episode 2. If you missed episode 1, we went over how our goal for the podcast is how long does it take to sell $1 million in Pokemon product. So this is January. We're going over the numbers. We're going into the details of costs, grading, eBay, everything that goes into it. I'm Matt Stagel here with my co-host and partner in crime, Matt Davidson. And let's jump right into it. I'll go ahead and share the sales that we had, share the numbers. So right here, this is a screenshot from eBay. Matt, take us through it.
Yeah. So like Matt said, we're just going to show you off what we did in January, this year, starting off the year, right. And we had just over $18,000 in total sales. You can see, there were some big days and some small days and days where we didn't sell anything. And that's kind of by design. We like to make it as easy as possible on ourselves by, setting up auctions and things on eBay and selling to make it, shipping a little easier. But yeah, this is going to be a lot of numbers in this presentation. Stay with us. You'll kind of get through this and understand, how much of this was profit, how much of this was expenses, how much of the, and how many cards it took for us to reach this level. But we wanted to just, be very transparent and show you exactly, what this breakdown will look like.
Yeah. And I think a big piece of this here is we're not trying to sell things necessarily slow. We're kind of running a little bit. So we're grading things fast. We're listing them. We're doing 99-cent auctions, just kind of trusting the eBay market. So some things will sell for lower than you thought. Some things will sell for a lot higher because maybe it's just in demand that week. So that's where you see those big spikes. We got a big grading order back from Beckett, and then we just listed it all, 7-day auction. And then 7 days later they sell. And then same thing, that second spike over here on the far side. We got another order back from Beckett, listed them. And that's kind of where we're here. But total sales, $18,161. And now let's break down the costs, profit, kind of what goes into it, and then a few of the cards we actually sold. So right here, we've got that sales number again. You see we grew over 1,000%, which is, I think, the most they let you because it's a brand new eBay store. Starting from zero, going with a brand new account, showing you exactly what you really need to do to grow here. So let's break down the profit. So we had total sales a little over 18,000. Costs that we'll break down in the next slide. We had a little over $7,500, which, grading, we've got shipping, we've got eBay fees. But if you see this big number here, that big 10,000, that's what we were shooting for, that total profit for the month. A lot of people really break it down and their whole goal is, how do I make a $10,000 a month business? Most people, it means sales. It doesn't mean you're profiting $10,000 a month. It's just, and so super excited to have this in the first month to do these type of numbers and sales and profit, all selling Pokemon cards.
Yeah. You look at that number, right? 142% return. Those are crazy numbers when you look at, if you were looking at an annual rate, right? But hey, no, this was 1 month, right? We bought these cards, by the end of December and got them graded, turned around real quick, and sold on eBay within 1 month's time. So this was not, hey, these were cards that we purchased, 5 years ago, right? The money for these cards came out very recently, and we'll show you our breakdown of where these costs come from, and also our strategy for grading cards very quickly. It does cost a lot more to do it like this, but as you can see, we can flip cards fairly quickly doing this method, and it provides a pretty substantial return that would make any stock trader envious.
And that's one big piece as we kind of jump into the costs here and the expenses, is if you actually think about it as a business and how do we get money in and out and kind of flowing, if you're able to say it costs you, and for us, we use Beckett 5-day Express, which costs $40 a card with no subgrades. So a lot of these cards won't have subgrades, but it's $40. But if you can sell that card for $700, that $40 seems a little bit, it's negligible compared to having to wait a year at PSA or Beckett economy grading. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we've been able to exploit, at least in the month of January, is just take advantage of the $40 a card and just kind of run with it as much as we can. But Matt, jump in and break down the expenses here.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that with the Beckett grading side. I'll get to that in a sec, but the cost of cards, right? This is just how much did we pay to obtain the cards that we wanted to sell, right? This doesn't count the cost of the cards that we got for our own collection. This doesn't count the cost of other projects we have going on right now, right? These are the cards that we're selling on eBay. How much did it cost for us to obtain them? And that's that number right there, just over 3,000. And, this wasn't one deal. This was a couple. There were a couple of cards from a couple different collections. And you'll see as they come through, right? There's some English, some Japanese.
And one thing to think about, Matt, is like, this is also us going a little wild with Vivid Voltage, a little wild with Champions Path. So a lot of those costs is we got lucky at Target, bought a few double boxes. We have a connection here locally that got us a few booster boxes of Vivid Voltage. So just had some fun. And that's kind of where it is. So it's a mix of buying collections from people and like just opening a bunch of newer packs, which was a lot of fun.
That's right. Yeah. We wanted to complete those newer sets, right? We wanted to see if we could open an entire Champions Path set ourselves. And, that was more for fun. We weren't expecting to make our money back on that, but we kind of did because we got lucky with some Charizard pulls. But yeah, so I mean, $3,000, that's nothing to bat an eye at, right? That's a lot of money to just throw down on cards. But if you already have, if you've already invested in your business and like our business is generating, this cash, it's like, hey, well, we can spend that $3,000 on some new cards, right? And that's what we did. So here's $3,000 down on our cards. Okay, cool. Now, how much does it cost to get those graded? Because selling a card raw, right? I mean, if we paid $3,000 for those cards raw, well, getting them graded and having them, in the 7, 8, 9, and even 10 graded range, that ups the value of those cards. So we had to make sure it was worth it. If we spent $40 per card, okay, we got to make sure that these cards that we're getting are in somewhat decent shape so that we can resell those for more than the cost of the card and the cost of grading. And like Matt said, we used the $40 Beckett Express 5-day service. And the reason we do this and not the basic $5, $10 route per card is because we want the time frame, right? We want stuff to come back quickly. For us, we'd rather spend the $40 and lose out on that little bit of profit margin to get the card back in 5 business days. Now, when they say 5 business days, it usually ended up being about 2 weeks. But when we do it this way, we're able to flip those cards and actually, see the return on our money. And now we can use that money to go purchase new cards and do it all over again, right? And this, like Matt said, this did not include the subgrades that Beckett is somewhat famous for. We opted against that because of the extra charge that they have for the subgrades. But as you'll see, it kind of didn't matter all that much. We might have missed out on the premium price, but they still sold it for about market average.
Well, and I think that's one big piece and kind of an exploit in the system even more with Beckett is if you get a 10, Beckett gives you subgrades for free. So we're sending in mint cards. I mean, a few of them aren't as good of condition, but if you're sending in some shinings from Neo Destiny, it doesn't matter if you get an 8, it's still worth the money to get them graded for $40 a card. But a big takeaway is with BGS, if you send them in, you get a 10 free subgrades. So if you're going to get a 10, might as well just spend $40 instead of 100 or 125 and kind of
this is one of those cards, right, where we got subgrades because we send it in and it got a 10 grade, but we didn't pay for that. We didn't have to pay the $100.
And for those of you guys listening, we've got a slide deck up right now. And then Matt was just showing a Champions Path Charizard VMAX that we got back from Beckett. That was a gold label. Just got a 9.5 for centering. So everything else was perfect. Almost had that black label, which is still like one of our main goals. We've never had a black label come through. But that's a big piece of what we're trying to do. Like as part of the collection, I mean, it's a fun card to have. And then you kind of enjoy it and then you can trade it, find other things you want, sell it. But that's a little bit of the, what goes into the grading. We've been really taking advantage of Beckett recently. And just seeing if that changes or if maybe we test out CGC in the near future. But back to expenses. So, I mean, we've got cost of cards, we've got grading costs, we've got eBay fees and shipping.
And then there's eBay and shipping. This is a big piece of Pokemon, right? You got to have a marketplace. You got to have a place to sell and find buyers. And for us, a big chunk of that is eBay. Mm-hmm. And we do pay a pretty hefty price to sell on eBay. We actually spent more on eBay and shipping / PayPal fees than grading the cards itself. And that needs to be taken into consideration when you're making these decisions. But like, when we're talking about our total cost of $7,500 and our total profits of total sales of 18,000, when we plan these numbers out, we saw that and we say, okay, it's worth it to us to do this. And that's kind of how we go about, measuring a deal beforehand, seeing like, hey, what are these cards going to cost us? What are the grading costs? What are the eBay shipping costs that we can project for it? And then we can easily estimate, oh yeah, we'll be fine.
And I think one big piece to think about is if you take these types of returns. So if we go back to this profit, 142% return is insane for a 2-week grading turnaround. So, I mean, we kind of have a rule of thumb. If you can get over a 25% return, do it. Because why wouldn't you? Like, that's just a smart business play. So if it's at least 25%, you send in every card you financially can to be able to kind of keep moving. So, I mean, we made in profit here $10,000. And for us, it's not necessarily to brag. We're just trying to document here and just show you, hey, this is totally possible with just like cards you can pick up on Facebook Marketplace, other eBay sellers if you're buying things raw. But
local deals, man. I mean, you've got people that live near you, I promise, that just have binders.
Which is a piece, like we live in Utah, and it's not like, I mean, my town is 80,000 people. Like, it's not a giant town with tons of cards, but like, you'd be shocked out in the boons. Like, you're in these small towns and people have binders and binders of just like amazing cards that are just happy to sell them and get a decent fair price. And then we can turn around and grade them. And that's where you really make your money. I mean, if you've been in Pokemon for any amount of time, you buy a card raw, you grade it, and then flip it. Like, that's the basic system that you can get paid every time if you know what you're doing.
All while keeping the cards we want for ourselves.
Yeah, this helps fuel some of the things that we want personally. But I mean, even then, the kind of snowball that occurs, now that we've done it in 10,000 in profit, we then can use that to grade the next round of cards. And then we did that. Like, so we right now have a Beckett order of 189 cards at that same $40 rate that should be sent back to us in the next couple days. And then that's that next route for February sales. Like, we just get those listed, we sell them, and just kind of keep running and snowball the effect in buying cards. And we'll kind of go deeper in the podcast, YouTube channel, TikTok, and show you like the basics of, hey, this is us going actually and meeting for a deal. This is what we bought. This is what we sold. So I think there's a lot that kind of goes into what we're doing and how repeatable it is if you want to do it too. So
absolutely.
So Matt, jump through this.
Yeah. So I bet, when you see those numbers, right, you see $18,000 sold, you think how many, wow, you must have spent, hundreds of hours listing cards and thousands of cards gone. But really, it would shock you how little work we had to put into this, right? As far as listing cards. I mean, we only sold 52 items. We don't dabble in, the modern sets and $5, $10, $15, even $20 a card, right? When we're talking vintage Pokemon product, if you get stuff in good condition, you get hundreds of dollars per card, if not thousands in the right case. And this is exactly what happened for us in January. We sold 52 items for an average sale price of $349. The highest sale that we had during the month of January was just over $1,000 at $1,025. And our lowest sale was $61. We'll get into the specifics of what these cards were and where we got them from. But this isn't this. We wanted to portray, we're not doing something crazy. This is just us spending some extra time throughout the day, finding cards, grading cards, listing cards, and ultimately selling cards, right? Like this isn't rocket science, and this doesn't require a ton of background knowledge, doesn't require a ton of time. It's really just having fun with it.
Well, and I think that's a big piece. Like there's a few basic, you kind of start where you are. And like Matt and I both have jobs, like we don't have kids, like we're both married, but it doesn't, like we have some extra cash flow. So it just kind of starts and snowballs from there. So like if you have $500 to buy cards, like you can quickly flip those cards into like much larger ranges. So you don't need to have thousands and thousands of cards. Like there was a collection we bought locally that was $200. It was a bunch of really nice Japanese cards that are kind of included in some of these sales. And we'll do a video later, like breaking down exactly what they were. But it was $200 for like 55, like near mint Japanese cards that, I mean, single cards from that set were selling for $200. Like, so we kind of took the gamble.
Graded.
Yeah. Graded. So we took the gamble to say, hey, what are these cards worth? This little binder collection, didn't have a ton of time to take a look at the cards just because it was freezing, because it's winter, and we met outside of some grocery store. So like we just say, hey, it's $200. We saw a couple big heavy hitter cards, some Blaine's Charizard, a base set Charizard, a few other decent cards, but it was $200. Like, and then when we broke down the actual numbers, we ended up with around 3,000 in sales. So, I mean, there's money to be made, and it's pretty simple if you know what you're doing. Obviously, eBay is a big help in finding values. YouTube is the best place to learn. Like YouTube, there are so many awesome people that are teaching about Pokemon, sharing their knowledge, which I think is a big piece. Like we've learned this all from YouTube, personal history with Pokemon growing up, and then just like a little bit of hustle.
Yeah, that's key. I love that. A little bit of hustle.
So let's break down. So highest sales, $1,025, lowest sales, $61. So let's break down what the card sold for the lowest.
Let's take a look.
So this card, it's a Neo Revelation Houndoom. It was part of that $200 collection that we bought of a bunch of Japanese cards. And we sold for a little over $60. And you got to think, we graded this card for $40.
We made $0 on this card.
I mean, when you run with it.
Sorry. I was to say, when you take into consideration the whole binder collection that we purchased for $200, right? And we say, hey, let's just throw them all in there and see what kind of grades they get. You know, this was one of the poorer grades on a maybe not so liked or popular card. I don't know why. I love it. I think it looks great. But you know, we were willing to take the hit on certain cards just because we knew that other ones were going to pick up the slack, right? And this ended up being our lowest graded card, lowest sold card. And yeah, we didn't make a single dollar here. We spent $40 grading it. We spent probably $20, you know, acquiring it, this individual card, and we sold it for $60.
So, I mean, we want to share like the losses, the not so good, as well as, I mean, the selling a card for $1,000 that was basically free if you factor in the other collection you bought with it. So then let's move to the highest card, which is a big one, is the Southern Islands Mew in English. And we graded it and it came back a 9.5, which in Beckett world,
this is a notoriously difficult card to grade due to the reverse hollow pattern. You know, the general rule in Pokemon is the more hollow there is on the card, the more difficult it is to grade, because the more opportunities there are to scratch, have print lines, and, you know, have some surface flaws. And so we got very lucky with this card. This was our $1,000 sale for the month. And this was just, you know, part of a Southern Islands collection. This was somebody that just like, hey, we have this little Southern Islands collection. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's just a collection of, you know, I think it's 18 cards that are just like kind of a promo side collector set called Southern Islands. And there's a couple holographics there. And of course, Mew being the most popular Pokemon is the chase card in the set. But yeah, we got really lucky here. And this was, you know, this is a very difficult, like I said, difficult card to grade. One of only a handful that's even ever been submitted to BGS.
Well, and it depends how you look at it. BGS is kind of weird sometimes on their website when you're looking at population reports. First population I looked at is this is the only one in BGS 9.5, so gold label. And then with further like research, we found that there are 2 other BGS 9.5s. So, I mean, this is pop 3 of like one of the most sought after Wizards of the Coast cards. And we just found it in a big collection that we bought this last month. And so it was a lot of fun to be able to get this card. It's one of my personal favorites. But to sell it for $1,000 is a lot of fun. Some honorable,
pretty cool.
Some honorable mentions. We got a Champions Path 9.5 shiny Charizard V. We had a Shadowless Blastoise at an 8. Just some solid heat, some solid cards that came through.
Just mentioning, that we pulled this Charizard V live on our TikTok. That was one of those cards I said, early on we were saying, hey, we pulled from Champions Path. We weren't expecting to make our money back. We bought a bunch of double boxes, but hey, we got one, and turned out to be a 9.5.
Yeah, nothing more fun than that gold label coming back. Wished it was a 10. We did get a 10 on the Charizard VMAX, the Rainbow Charizard, and that's currently listed on eBay if you're looking for something to buy. But even then, like, just another story is I picked up this. I mean, one of the best ways to get cards is Facebook and Facebook groups, and there's a bunch of people selling cards and all these different Pokemon groups. So the Shadowless Blastoise that we sold, I think it sold for a little over $450. And I bought it. I think it was along with like 6 other cards. The average card price was like $60 out of the cards that we bought. So I bought it along with some Neo Destiny Shining Pokemon. And I mean, you sell one card, it pays for everything. And then all the other cards are in theory free if you can get one card to grade well. So, and that's another thing with grading is I thought this card was going to be a 5, 6 that we'd keep personally, but it came back an 8. So sometimes you get lucky with grading.
That's true. You never know until you send it in, right? And I think something to mention, this is a good place to mention this here. In the past, when we started with Pokemon a couple of years ago, and if you look at like the sports card market today, there's a huge market for the cards that are in perfect condition, the 10s. And then there's like a smaller market for the 9s. And then there was a huge drop off, right? After you got below 9, people kind of lost a lot of interest. Like, okay, well, hey, it's just a card. I have that card, raw. That could be an 8. And I think with the resurgence of Pokemon over the last year or so, what it's done is it's buoyed the entire market up, right? Like the 9s and 10s are going for such an outrageous amount now. But I think the not so looked at story, but it is just as important, is how valuable the 8s and 7s, 6s, and 5s, have become. Like I said, a couple of years ago, this BGS 8 Shadowless Blastoise might not have been a popular item, but in today's market, it really is, right? And so now we're taking this into consideration too, and we're looking at collections. When we're looking at a binder, we say, hey, do we think this can get a 7 or an 8? Or if it's not a 9 or a 10, pristine condition, say, is this going to be a 7 or an 8? And then we say that might still be worth it, depending on the card.
Well, I think what really comes down to it is if we're thinking about it, not necessarily, at least from when we're actually selling things. Like, I mean, obviously we collect and we have a lot of fun that way. But if we're selling something and it costs $40 to grade, basically, if you can get a card worth over $100, it's worth grading because then you can make $40, $50 a card. 40, 50 plus, because obviously like there's more upside with Pokemon cards, but like, why wouldn't you grade every card you can at that $40 and kind of roll the dice? Like this Blastoise was like, hey, if it's a sucky grade, maybe we just keep it because it's a fun card to own. But I mean, sometimes you luck out and it's better. I mean, their eyes are better than yours and they use different tools in the grading process. And maybe he was just having a good day. Like maybe the grader was just like, hey, here's an 8. You're welcome. So I think that's a big piece of the grading process that, I mean, we'll go over in other videos and kind of break down more what to look for and how to do it. But let's move on to some more honorable mentions that we sold this last month. We got that Pikachu Rainbow, the Chunkachu, the Pikachu VMAX came back at a 9. We got this on Instagram with a bunch of almost all of the Vivid Voltage Hollows we bought for about $350, which included this Pikachu, which ended up selling for, I think, $450, which was a little bit of a lull in the market. Like when we actually got this sold, it's now gone up higher than that. But to get all the hollows that we wanted for our personal collection and get the Pikachu VMAX, I mean, it's 100% worth buying those kind of deals and kind of averaging out the price of what it cost us to grade that.
Yeah, and who doesn't love a good Dark Charizard from Team Rocket sets? We were kind of shocked to see that. I thought this card was going to be, maybe an 8, right? And it came back a 9. And this is kind of like a recurring theme that Matt and I have had over the last couple months.
We grade ourselves really hard.
We look at a card and we say, okay, let's project this. Let's project it at a 7 or an 8. Okay, if we're lucky, we'll get a 9. And more times than not, whatever number we said, hey, if we're lucky, that's the number that it came back as, right? And we're pretty harsh graders ourselves when it comes to like looking at the card and gauging its value. But it was a lot of fun to see these cards come through our system, sell, and pay for the rest of them.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing. I mean, we had 52 cards sell. We had a lot of first editions come through, some cool Team Rocket stuff. But overall, I mean, this was just basically a breakdown of kind of what we did in the month of January. We want to get really specific, kind of show you really the nitty gritty details of what we're doing both as a business and as collecting. So we'll share a lot of those types of things too. We thought, why not get started? These videos are a little bit more dry. Like they'll probably get a lot less views of people going through it, but it's worth it for us, and hopefully worth it for you to see like, hey, what's really going down when you're kind of trying to scale a Pokemon business and do some big numbers. But I don't know. I'm excited with those numbers that we shared. We've got a bunch of cards coming back from Beckett. Hopefully in these next couple of days. I mean, the weather's been insane down there, so we should have had it a week ago, but with all the snowstorms in Texas right now, it's just been a wild ride.
So I guess our official number then, right? On the road to 1 million, January, we've got 18,100.
Yeah. And I think, it's a solid start. I mean, our goal for the year is to do 300,000 in sales. And we have right now, I mean, hundreds of cards at Beckett, hundreds of cards at PSA, and like, oh man, slower economy thing. So we'll be lucky to get it back this year, but we'll see what happens there. Might test out some CGC. But we'll keep updating you. I think our next podcast is probably going to be an interview with a local collector. And if you're interested in being interviewed or want to be on the show, like we're happy to have you. We want to tell people stories and kind of just talk overall Pokemon and just keep pumping out good content here.
Reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening. I mean, this is available everywhere podcasts are available or on YouTube. We'll clip this up, throw it on TikTok and Instagram. And thanks for listening.